Judges are responsible for the safety of everybody who appears before the court for any reason, right? For the safety and security of those people so they can do their lawful business before the court. If Trump's immigration agents are staking out courthouses to grab people, to kidnap people, once they show up to take part in a lawful court proceeding, that stops judges from fulfilling their responsibilities under the law for what happens with their cases and in their courtrooms. Well, today, a whole new level. Today, the FBI arrested a county judge in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. According to the FBI, this judge knew that Trump's immigration agents were outside her courtroom waiting to arrest a man who was before her court. They say she sent the immigration agents away from her hearing room and then escorted the man and his lawyer out of the courtroom through a private exit.
Yeah, and to set the stage for you and Sandra, this is what's truly horrific. This guy was in court being prosecuted by a state prosecutor for domestic violence battery. He had beat up two people, a guy and a girl, hit the guy 30 times, knocked him to the ground, choked him, beat up a woman so badly they both had to go to the hospital.
So one of the things that is impressive about the United States of America is that we have such partisan media in this country that you are getting two different versions of events all the time and constantly, and this causes people to think that right now, at this very moment, evil orange man President Trump has taken the first step to his Nazi fascist takeover by arresting a judge who, by the way, based on the original reporting, you would assume just disagreed with him on immigration policy, and this was a judge that was connected to immigration policy, and therefore, this country is over, constitutional crisis, our hero Hannah Dugan needs our support because she stood up to the evil orange man. She upheld her constitutional oath. Therefore, she should not be held accountable or punished by the Trump administration, who's a bunch of bad meanies that are just evil white and racist and filled with evil white racism. However, when you look into this particular case, what you discover is that what this judge did, if it's not illegal, they might have to change the law to make it illegal, because for a private citizen, in all other contexts, this is 100% a crime. This is 100% by far and away a premeditated crime, and that's what we got to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So let me read a little bit from the criminal complaint here. And Judge Dugan says, despite having been advised of the administrative warrant for the arrest of Flores-Ruiz, Judge Dugan then escorted Flores-Ruiz and his counsel out of the courtroom through the jury door, which leads to a non-public area of the courthouse. A foot chase ensued. The agents pursued Flores-Ruiz for the entire length of the courthouse and ultimately apprehended him. According to this complaint, Judge Dugan was visibly angry that ICE was there to arrest Flores-Ruiz, even tried to kick the deportation agents out of the courthouse.
So let's be clear about one thing right off the top, because I want to be fair to both sides of the argument. There are a lot of people on the left wing that say that this Wisconsin Judge Hannah Dugan was arrested in the parking lot as a show of force, as a way to make an example of her, as a way to have something for the cameras to film, to embarrass her, to humiliate her, and that is 100% true. The Trump administration is doing that part in that manner in order to make a statement. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about the Trump administration using a style of arrest to make a statement, but the fact is, this is a common practice, and the way that I tend to judge it is whether or not the statement is actually related to something good. So what we need to understand is what is being alleged, and I use the words alleged in this case because there is no conviction against Hannah Dugan, because the allegations at face value are absolutely absurd from top to bottom. But again, you need to understand that this all has to do with a criminal defendant that was facing battery charges in her courtroom that she allegedly helped escape the custody of ICE agents. So let us go into the details of this particular case so you can understand what is going on.
And John, you know, it's so rare for victims to want to cooperate. They wanted to cooperate. They were sitting in the courtroom with the state prosecutor. The judge learns that ICE was outside to get the guy because he had been deported in 2013, came back in our country, commits these crimes, charged with committing these crimes, victims in court. Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom. You're not going to believe this. Takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes him out a private exit and tells him to leave.
So the information that I'm bringing to you actually comes from an article from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. It will be linked in the description. You guys can read it for yourselves, but let me just give you a quick rundown. So Eduardo Flores-Ruiz is a Mexican illegal immigrant to the United States of America who has supposedly been deported in the past, I believe in 2013, and apparently ICE was looking for him because he has illegally re-entered the country post-deportation. Look, I'm going to be clear about where I stand in terms of my opinion, and this should be obvious, but if you've already been deported from the United States of America, as is reported with Ruiz, who supposedly was ejected from this country back in 2013, your re-entry to this nation is a big problem for me. You've already had your due process, you've already been removed or told to leave, because sometimes they actually allow them to leave voluntarily, and in this case, that appears to be what has gone down. However, he's been back, we're 11, 12 years later at this moment in time, and now he is under arrest for 3 misdemeanor charges involving domestic violence against what I think is his 2 roommates, or 1 roommate and another person. But let us get into the details of those allegations, which again, as the super mayor would say, these are allegations and not facts.
False allegations and not facts.
Flores-Ruiz is charged with 3 counts of misdemeanor battery, domestic violence, and infliction of physical harm, according to a criminal complaint. His charges are from a March 12th fight that occurred between Flores-Ruiz and his 2 roommates after he was accused of playing music too loudly in the home. The complaint says Flores-Ruiz punched 1 roommate 30 times, then hit a woman who tried to end the fight. Now look, I want you guys to all understand that I'm Latino. I'm half Puerto Rican. You guys all know that. I've mentioned it on this channel multiple different times, but I want you to understand that despite my Latino heritage, that does not mean that this does not hit a little too close to home with me in terms of the loud music playing, because one of my Puerto Rican family members lives in an apartment building. They had a new roommate move in, and you can quite literally feel the apartment shaking because of the level of music that they're blasting on the apartment that is on a different floor from them. So I understand the pain that is going on right here. I understand the anger, and in no way, shape, or form is it appropriate when somebody tells you to turn down your music for you to punch them 30 times. This sounds like a beatdown. This sounds quite serious, and it begs the question, at least for me, which is, why wouldn't they actually prosecute this as a felony charge? Because this seems like a brutal beating, not to mention the fact that the blasting of the music against your roommates, that's just a faux pas, and we should not have those people in this country. Again, he can't even respect the people within his own apartment. He can't even respect the people that he lives with, and we're supposed to expect him to respect the laws of our country. Obviously, he's not going to do that. Obviously, he's going to violate that, and that means he should get gone. So obviously, you end up having a court hearing. Now, this guy was arrested. He was going to face these charges of domestic violence. You guys saw from the complaint that at least one of the people that he attacked was a woman, and you actually had the victims there present, ready to go, and you had the state's attorney, the prosecutor, all set up for this preliminary hearing. But apparently, this is when Dugan discovered that there were ICE agents waiting outside the courtroom in the hallway to pick up this suspect after this hearing concluded.
Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom. You're not going to believe this. Takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave, while a state prosecutor and victims of domestic violence are sitting in the courtroom.
Wow. You know, Madam Attorney General.
Now, like I said earlier, Flores-Ruiz was removed from the United States of America on January 16th of 2013 when it was ruled that he needed an expedited removal from this nation. Now, he was in the country, obviously in Milwaukee, because he has been charged with this particular crime, but you need to understand that at no time did he even apply to re-enter the United States legally. He just snuck across the border and again had been here for over 11 years at the time that ICE was able to match his fingerprints and whatnot to their system, and they decided to pick him up. And 6 agents were reportedly waiting in the hallway outside the courtroom when Dugan discovered that this was the case and decided that she was going to go out and talk to them. Now, as a distraction, and again, this is me editorializing a little bit, although it is in the allegations from the federal government, Dugan had told these ICE agents that they actually needed to coordinate with the chief judge in this courtroom to talk about the procedure on what you should do in order to remove somebody with the administrative warrant that they had, which is the warrants that oftentimes ICE uses, and then she returned into her courtroom. At this moment in time, she decided to call in the defense attorney and Flores-Ruiz into her chambers, and then she provided them access to a very private exit that they use for the jury during criminal trials in order for Flores-Ruiz to escape his ICE arrest. Now, this, in my opinion, is absolutely crucial because Dugan essentially formulated this plan in order to get this person, who, by the way, she would have known because she talked to these agents, had already been deported from the United States of America, away from the custody of ICE, and to me, this is obvious intent to violate the law. And again, it seems like it's absolutely crazy to do for somebody who is being charged with domestic violence, including domestic violence against a female. Again, this is a progressive left-wing judge. People have often highlighted Dugan's past political statements that is using her position to help a fugitive escape from law enforcement. This would be illegal undoubtedly for a private citizen to do, and it would be hard for me to imagine some kind of exemption to the law that makes this okay or acceptable for a judge to act in this way. Although I do want to point out that the federal law in question could be written in such a way that this kind of official procedure happens to be exempt or something, or that this does not technically constitute a violation of federal law. Again, that's why we have court cases. That's why we actually adjudicate these things. And these are, of course, the allegations from the Justice Department. They are not necessarily facts. But if true, even if it's not technically illegal, which again, I do believe it is probably technically illegal, this is absurd. This is absolutely insane. Could you imagine a circumstance where somebody approaches a judge saying that they have a warrant for another matter or another jurisdiction, and that judge decides to sneak the defendant out through a back door? By the way, Flores-Ruiz ended up leading ICE agents on a police chase. We've seen this in Colorado where ICE agents actually got injured due to the fact that they can't turn over people to ICE directly. They have to release them in the parking lot, and then ICE has to recapture them. But yeah, he was caught eventually after the police chase, even though he was trying to run away. But you have an instance right here where the prosecutors were absolutely stunned that they released this individual that they were expecting to try, again, through a side entrance. And everybody should be shocked by this because, again, this guy has shown to be a violent person. Now, obviously, very unlikely that he had weapons because he was in court at that moment in time. But the idea that you're going to aid and abet the escape of somebody, the fleeing of a fugitive, and not face any consequences because you're a local county judge, to me is a bit absurd. To me is a bit ridiculous. And again, the way this story was originally pitched by the mainstream media, I swear, if you read the headlines and you didn't think that Trump was prosecuting an immigration judge for disagreeing with him in terms of policy, then you are not reading it correctly because it was deliberately meant to be deceptive. But what we have right here is somebody who, again, aided and abetted somebody who was already deported from this country, who is currently being charged with domestic violence for attacking the people that he lives with. That's crazy in my opinion. That is so over the line. That is so inappropriate. And I think this prosecution of this judge just makes sense. And by the way, for those of you who think this is like crossing the Rubicon or this is a great acceleration for the evil orange man, in 2019, there were similar situations where the Trump administration was actually going to pursue criminal charges against a judge who is going beyond the duties in order to protect an illegal migrant. So we already went through this. We already didn't see the constitutional crisis. We already didn't see the march of the Nazis on the streets in the United States of America, because in reality, what's happening right here is that the judge is being held accountable for her actions. Now, again, as of right now, we will see what the consequences of this are. Obviously, Flores-Ruiz is innocent until proven guilty on the 3 counts of domestic violence that he's facing, so we can't say convicted domestic abuser at this moment in time. And of course, Dugan has the right to due process as well. And again, I'm not familiar with the laws surrounding these specific circumstances, but in my opinion, if you are an average everyday citizen, and again, it could be different from a judge, because remember, courtrooms are public, but these ICE agents had to wait outside of the courtroom, so there could be different rules right here that I want to leave room for, because I don't want to give you guys bad analysis and tell you that this judge is 100% going to jail. But it seems like if you were to go out tell ICE agents that they needed to go over there, or any law enforcement officer, and then facilitate the escape of the suspect that they were looking for, that would be illegal. That would be a crime, and you would expect to be arrested for this. So honestly, again, as long as this can be proven in court, as long as there is a specific violation that Hannah Dugan can be held accountable for, I'm totally fine with this. In fact, I think it is more than acceptable, because it's absolutely crazy that this woman decided to sneak this guy out of court when, again, he's already been deported from the United States of America. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a crazy case out of Wisconsin. Till next time.